Really pleased to welcome you all today to the Therapeutic Horticulture Activities Database, or THAD webinar, exploring the possibilities of this great database. This webinar is hosted by the Florida Horticulture for Health Network, as well as the Nova Scotia Horticulture for Health Network. My name is Sarah Sterling, and as part of the Florida Horticulture for Health Network Advisory Board, I'm really pleased to welcome you here today. The Florida Horticulture for Health Network uses several platforms to share information and education. They're listed on the initial slide, which I'll have Lesley put up in just a second. Please consider subscribing to the network via this website. We send out monthly e-blasts to subscribers with upcoming webinars, recent YouTube videos, horticulture information, and other interesting events related to how horticulture can positively impact health. Today, our two presenters are both members of the Florida Horticulture for Health Network. The first is Lesley Fleming. She's a registered horticultural therapist leading the Florida Horticulture for Health Network, as well as the Nova Scotia Horticulture for Health Network. Her most recent work has been on the Therapeutic Horticulture Activities Database, or THAD, as part of the advisory team and as a contributor to more than 75 activities. She publishes 2 quarterly e-publications, Digging In and Cultivate, and writes extensively on topics relevant to horticultural therapy and horticulture for health. Our other presenter is Leah Diehl, is Director of Therapeutic Horticulture at Wilmot Botanic Gardens and lecturer in the Environmental Horticulture Department at the University of Florida. She is a licensed landscape architect, master gardener, professionally registered horticultural therapist. She manages and teaches an undergraduate certificate program in horticultural therapy at UF, conducts research, runs therapeutic horticulture programming for diverse populations, where she trains and manages clients, students, and volunteers. I'm super excited to have both of these amazing women be presenting today. So thank you and welcome.
Thank you. I guess I'm saying thank you for both of us. Thanks for inviting us to speak in this forum. THAD, the Therapeutic Horticulture Activities Database, was created in early 2024, and it's a resource jam-packed with horticulture, hands-on plant and gardening activities, and related resources. So we could use the whole time talking about great activities, and Leah and I probably would like to do that, like seed portraits or Valentine kissing ball, but THAD is so much more than that. Lee, do you want to start off with some basics on THAD?
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're all having a good Tuesday. I am Leah Diehl, and I'm going to get us started by talking a little bit about the THAD database and also talk a little bit about some ways that it can be used. And then Lesley's going to take over and go into more detail with some of the different kinds of activities and the database and things like that. So THAD, the Therapeutic Horticulture Activities Database, was created in early 2024. Actually, honestly, it was really more early, or in 2023, it was launched actually in the very beginning of 2024. It has a lot of fantastic horticulture-based kinds of activities that include gardening, plant art, plant crafts, cooking, harvesting, all sorts of really good stuff. The content can be really helpful for you kind of no matter whether you are a registered horticultural therapist or you're a social worker, or lots of different ways. And we're going to talk about the versatility in just a minute. So THAD is free. Right now, I think, Lesley, it has over about 225 different activities on it, plant and garden type activities. And what's great about it is that each activity is presented in a very succinct 2-page format. It's going to look the same for every THAD that you look at in terms of that organization. It's also very easy to access. All you have to do is do THAD at UF, and it'll pop up. Usually, at least on my browser, it's the first thing that comes up. So that's easy to find, and it is hosted by the University of Florida, IFAS, through the Environmental Horticulture Department, which is my home department, and it does rely on science-based evidence. We've referenced and cited a lot of different references in the THADs and also the extension publications, which are really great in terms of some of the plant information in particular. So we really do think this can be an amazing source of information for you and the people that you work with. So a little bit of background here. Excuse me, you can see the list of some of the networks that have been involved with this. It was developed by horticultural therapy practitioners, all of who have some training in horticultural therapy. And what's really cool is that it's this collaborative effort between these different regional groups. So the Florida Horticulture for Health Network, Nova Scotia Horticulture for Health Network, California Horticultural Therapy Network, Mid-Atlantic, the Carolinas, and also the University of Florida Certificate in Horticultural Therapy. So a lot of really great people have been involved in the creation of this database. So the thing that's important about these is that these have been tested. You know, we're not just kind of throwing in ideas and writing them up, but that we're actually have had practice in doing these activities. So we can tease out the things that we really need to make clear and some of the applications that are, you know, important for each activity. So although the database was really designed as a tool for horticultural therapy and therapeutic horticulture practitioners, and that means that the activities are kind of goal-oriented based on the clients being served. We're also thinking, and this was part of the plan, was that it would be used by other allied professionals, rec therapists, occupational therapists, other folks, educators, master gardeners, activity directors. So in other words, if you aren't a therapeutic practitioner, these activities can still be really helpful for you. They can help you to expand your plant programming, whether it's geared toward recreation or social interaction, general wellness, education, even environmental activities. So these are activities that are geared toward all ages and abilities. And what's great is that each one really does include notes on safety, adaptations, other great notes to consider depending on who you're working with and in what setting you're working. So it was intended that that people in other fields would also find this database really helpful. And given that it is the second most visited website in the Environmental Horticulture Department at UF, I think that people are actually checking it out, which is great. And as I said, we did design this with versatility in mind. Again, education, recreation, social wellness, environmental activities. This was all part of the development. And so, you know, we do want you to have a sense of that and not feel like just because you aren't a registered horticultural therapist, this isn't going to be useful for you, because it really will be. So when you look at the homepage, you can see that the database looks like this when you first get there. It identifies the different kinds of activities, whether they're based on goals or populations or all activities. There's also, Lesley, can you scroll to the top? Is our recent activities up there? Or oh, you know what? I think he might be changing them out as we speak. Typically, we have, oh, that's right. I'm sorry. I'm thinking we're actually on the webpage. When you go to the homepage, you'll see at the top that there are kind of featured activities. So if you're a regular visitor to the website, you can just click on some of them. Sometimes they're new activities. Sometimes they're activities that people that haven't noticed before, but those are always fun to check out. And then you can see here how we are organizing it. And just in the blue there, you can see gives you some information about that. And also there's a contributors list, all the people that have contributed. And if you want to reach out and contact us, there's a form to do that as well. So let's look a little bit more closely at the categories that THAD uses so you can start thinking about how to use these resources. So first, when we're looking at activities, we have 9 different areas for organizing the therapeutic horticulture activities. Planting, propagation, and harvesting, you can read through these. These are all different ways. So this is one of the ways we've categorized these different THADs. So if, for example, you're interested in nature, you can click on that link and that'll take you to our list of ones that are especially oriented with nature or food or cooking. And then therapeutic goals are another way that we organize these different activities. So we use the 5 key health domains for organizing them: cognitive, intellectual, psychological, emotional, physical, sensory, and social. Now, of course, there are others, but this is what we're using at this point, what the THAD database is using. And hopefully that you can, you know, it may not be that you're looking for activities based specifically on this, but rather a type of activity or for a particular client group. But I think it is helpful for you to know that we've also organized them this way. If you are looking for, hey, I really want some activities that are really focusing on sensory stimulation. Let's see. And then when we're looking at populations, we use 11 different population categories, and I feel like this is growing all the time. You can see some of the ones that we are including now. And Again, if you have some suggestions for another population that we might want to include, just send some thoughts in on that contact form, and we'd love to consider that. There's also a tab for all populations. So, and I'm sorry, all activities. So you can kind of look at that as well if you just want to scroll through the entire list. So this is what a THAD activity would look like at the top of the first page. And what I want to point out here is in this first box where we've gone and determined particular therapeutic goals in those 5 domains that are relevant to this activity. That doesn't mean that we're expecting that you're going to use all of those or emphasize all of those, but it kind of gives you a starting point if you're wanting to think about what are some of those therapeutic goals that I can actually incorporate into delivering this activity for my particular group. So you can see we've got some suggestions based on this activity. You know, for example, in the cognitive area, we might be thinking about, this is about cultivating gratitude. So let's discuss what gratitude is, you know, get some of those cognitive juices flowing. You know, could we reflect on some of those personal experiences when gratitude has played a part in an experience that we've had. So, you know, getting some of the brain elasticity going. And then of course, as you kind of work down here, you can see how this activity could apply. So that's a really useful part of this. And I think that maybe just taking a quick look as a reminder, some of you may be very familiar with this definition, others may not, but we are kind of basing these on therapeutic horticulture versus horticultural therapy. So just really quickly, the definition of therapeutic horticulture by the American Horticultural Therapy Association is the participation in horticultural activities facilitated by a registered horticultural therapist or other professionals with training in the use of horticulture as a therapeutic modality to support program or therapeutic goals. Therapeutic horticulture is the process through which participants enhance their well-being through active or passive involvement in plant and plant-related activities. Now, we don't typically use clinical charting or documentation of goals in therapeutic horticulture interventions. We do sometimes document group-based goals. So we might be looking at the group overall. But that use of therapeutic goals is really an essential component in delivering therapeutic horticulture activities, you know, as is the framework of the therapeutic process, the horticultural therapy standards of practice, code of ethics, all of these different kinds of things. I don't want this to scare you off. If you are in the field, this is really important to know. But just so you understand why we have included the different types of therapeutic goals kind of front and center in these is because we do hope that that will be then helpful for people that are using these activities in a therapeutic way. So when you are looking at THAD and the different activities, really consider which of these different categories is appropriate. An activity can fall into many categories, and that's probably one of the most challenging parts of organizing these activities is figuring out which category they should be put into, because there is so much overlap, which is great. So we do try to avoid the duplication of activities, but sometimes a similar activity can be written with a strong focus on a particular population and its related goals. And that's one of the things that we're going to be looking at a little bit more in detail as we move into the future with these THAD activities to really make this database even more robust in terms of the type of detail and the types of activities that we can really hone in on the benefits for specific populations. So Lesley, you have worked a tremendous amount on writing and editing these THADs. You know, you've created many on your own. You've kind of taken activities and you've rewritten them into our THAD template. Can you kind of share a little bit more on some of the therapeutic goals that each one of these has?
Absolutely, Lee. So one of the overall goals of the database is to expand practitioner knowledge by identifying the goals, as Lee was mentioning, in each of the 5 health domains for every activity. We do not have to rely on the same 5 goals, and I did this early on in my practice. So note that not all of the stated goals in THAD would be used in a single session. Knowledge of therapeutic goals is foundational to HT and TH, and for some of you, you may choose to use the THAD activities for wellness or recreation or education, and you may not choose to incorporate therapeutic goals, but take a look at them to expand your personal understanding of the TH modality. We wanted to mention 2 resources on therapeutic horticulture goals published in late 2024, and they're listed here. A Journal of Therapeutic Horticulture article, the title Therapeutic Horticulture and Therapeutic Goals, Expanding the Scope and Practice Through the Therapeutic Horticulture Activities Database and its Use of Health Domain Specific Goals, was written by Lee, Katie Grimes, and myself. And then the second paper I wrote with contributions from Lee and Katie, and its title, Practitioner Tool Therapeutic Horticulture Goals with THAD Activity Examples, Cognitive Domain, was published in the Florida Horticulture for Health Network ePub Cultivate in December of 2024. And it's the first in a 5-part series touching on the 5 health domains. So these articles identify and list specific therapeutic horticulture goals by health domains. Now, the 2 papers listed here use slightly different headings and labels for therapeutic goals, each citing THAD examples. Both papers focus on goals used in therapeutic horticulture and use the 5 health domains already mentioned. So we're going to give a quick overview of health domains identifying functional areas, goal areas, specific goals, and related TH activities drawn from THAD and from the 2 papers that I just identified. Therapeutic goals are an important component of TH, therapeutic horticulture. So we have devoted some time to this foundational information in this webinar. Now, because the audience we know is not just HT practitioners, we're going to suggest that you explore this area further on your own. Therapeutic horticulture goals by specific health domain. And you can see listed on the screen, the health domains that we're talking about are cognitive intellectual, physical, psychological, emotional, sensory, and social. Lee, you're very photogenic. Here's a picture of Lee in one of her programs. Okay, so starting off with the cognitive intellectual health domain. One way of looking and thinking about therapeutic goals is by functional areas. And the Journal of Therapeutic Horticulture paper organizes therapeutic horticulture goals in this domain using the functional areas plus goal areas. So here is a subset, planning and organization, and it includes goal areas of sequencing, prioritization, time management and goal setting, reasoning and problem solving, and flexible thinking. So you can also see the related THAD examples. The THAD examples for cognitive domain goals span the 9 activity areas that Lee mentioned and most of the 10 population categories. And some of the examples here, making salsa, that would be from food and cooking, hardening off plants, and vocational horticulture tasks like plant care, herb propagation, planting, and so on. The cognitive intellectual domain also includes functional area subsets of memory, focus, and knowledge, including job skills development, and the THADs that identify specific therapeutic goals in the cognitive domain and the other 4 domains. So this listing, drawn from the practitioner tool article, identifies some specific TH goals plus the THAD examples. So what we're suggesting is that the 2 articles offer 2 ways of exploring and expanding your understanding of therapeutic horticulture goals, and THAD offers practitioners more than 200 plus activities with therapeutic goals across health domain. And I'll just leave this screen up so you can read some of the examples. Okay, so using THAD online or clicking on the THAD links in the articles takes you to the activity plans. And here's an example of a cognitive domain THAD involving reasoning and problem solving and/or focus, self-restraint, and emotion control. Now, in the cognitive domain, other goal areas include concentration, attention to task, self-restraint, task initiation, language and numbers, and memory. And just quickly go through that example, the activity description: participants or patients from a psychiatric hospital will garden in the on-site garden. Therapeutic goals in the cognitive intellectual domain recognize strategies for improving self-regulation, follow facilitator directions. Now you can see some of the other TH goals in the other domains, and each of these can be incorporated into the TH session, though practitioners would select one, maybe two, for a particular session. And as Lee mentioned, each THAD includes material lists, step-by-step instructions, applications for publications, safety considerations, and references. In the cognitive domain, other goal areas include concentration, attention to task, self-restraint, task initiation, language and numbers and memory. I think I mentioned that. And then here are some THAD examples: growing mindful awareness in TH activities, a game, matching photos to live plants, forcing paper white bulbs, and peeling vegetables. Now, we do try to use descriptive titles for THADs, and sometimes we try to be humorous. Maybe that lands, maybe it doesn't, but this should give you an idea of the scope of the THADs that we're incorporating into the database. So moving on to the physical health domain, therapeutic horticulture, therapeutic goals, plus the THAD examples. Lee, I know you deliver therapeutic horticulture with physical health goals, so join in with any comments. But I'm going to start off by quoting the Journal of Therapeutic Horticulture article that we wrote, and it is: therapeutic horticulture goals in the physical domain are primarily focused on improving mobility, physical strength, range of motion, balance, fine and gross motor skills, and adaptations for tasks and skills involving hands. The scope of goals used in TH within the physical health domain are broad for physical challenges across health diagnoses, injury, and physical functioning. And we are seeing that they are expanding and now integrating goals related to pain management, physiological inputs to self-regulation, as well as adaptations for using artificial limbs and assistive devices. So let me present these in this format. Big picture, functional area, moving through goal areas to specific examples. And as listed in the Journal of Therapeutic Horticulture paper, the subset on physical domain, and it's on the screen here, coordination subset. And you can see eye-hand coordination, balance and stability, range of motion. Physical domain organized in the journal paper, in addition to the screenshot with coordination as one of the functional areas, also includes motor function, strength and exercise, and healthy lifestyle. Specific therapeutic horticulture goals in the physical domain could include strengthening fine motor skills, and the THAD example, seed self-portrait, was submitted from Amy Chance, or addressing dysgraphia, functional digital grasp, or other hand grip challenges. And the THAD example you can see here is celery shenanigans. And you can see a few more specific TH goals on this slide. And these are from the practitioner tool article for physical domain. So let's look at a specific THAD example so you can familiarize yourself with the THAD resource and its format. And as Lee said, we're using the same template. So if you only want some of this information, you should be able to quickly zone in on that. So we're still in the physical health domain, and the THAD example is titled Plan, Plant, and Eat the Rainbow. And this THAD focuses on nutrition, lifestyle, and impacts on physical health. The therapeutic goals in the physical domain include strategies where participants develop nutrition-based plans for self-care, improving or coping with physical or medical or lifestyle challenges. And then goals in each of the 5 domains suggest ways that the TH activity can be used, and this would be based on client specifics and their needs. In this THAD, information on food is medicine movement, produce prescription programs, and gardens designed as color zones offer lots of great information and resources. And I have to say, more recently, we've been trying to boost that type of information, which would probably fall under notes and other considerations. That may involve more specific plan information or population information, and you will see that also in the references. So I'd like to say there is some interpretation and discussion among practitioners. Oh, Lee, I think we had this discussion when we were doing the paper related to goals and labels and classifications. And you can see and use the resources we're suggesting today and decide which works for you and your clients. Physical function goals related to specific health conditions such as stroke or cerebral palsy, arthritis, and even developmental disability can be targeted to the needs of each type of client group within the physical domain. And you can see goal areas on this shot of sleep with relevant THAD activities. So that would be one subset. Okay, so moving on to the psychological emotional health domain and its therapeutic goals. One of the things that we noted in the journal paper that this health domain does not have finite parameters. And I'm going to cite the journal article because we did take time thinking and expressing this. Generally, psychological health and related challenges pertain to the ability to manage difficult situations, rational thinking, and decision making. It can involve emotional health, defined as one's ability to manage moods, feelings, and responses. Now, mental health encompasses both psychological and emotional realms. However, a distinction is made by medical and therapeutic professionals often between mental health and behavioral health. Behavioral health focuses on actions affecting well-being and impact on physical and mental health, not on psychological inputs. Stress is an example where both mental and behavioral responses and thoughts are linked. So, we're talking about some complex notions and practices here, which is why you may want to look at the recording of this or look at the articles that we're suggesting. The Therapeutic Horticulture Activities Database, THAD, combines psychological, emotional, and behavioral goals within the psychological emotional domain. And as I said, for many health professionals, these may need to be further distinguished based on individuals and populations with specific challenges and prioritized goals. And the example that we would give is survivors of human trafficking. And we do have, well, this THAD on the screen is one that was written for that population. Like many health domains, health challenges are not black and white, and they may fall into several domains. And just taking a quick look at this THAD, Sowing Seeds in Winter, and it was written by Zuzana Polikova, working with female survivors of human trafficking. The psychological goals included exploring a sense of renewal, focus on self-care, life skills, and personal needs. Therapeutic goals in the psychological emotional domain include sub-areas of self-regulation, social emotional learning, personal growth, mood, grief, and strategies for coping and improving disruptions to functioning. Now, here are 3 THAD examples. Moss Frame with the goal normalizing feelings of inadequacy, and that one was written by Sarah, who's our moderator today. The next example is planting a teapot garden, and one of the goals identified here is self-initiating tasks. And then the third THAD, tending garden beds, and the goal that I extracted, using personal agency, exploring the right to live at risk and what this means. And this one was written for people living with dementia, written by recreation professional Beth House from the Nova Scotia Hort for Health Network. So we're moving through the health domains using THAD rather quickly. We're trying to show you the scope. So again, you may want to take time after the webinar to explore it a little bit more. Moving into the next domain, sensory health domain, therapeutic goals plus THADs. Now, sensory stimulation, as we know, is a basic element of HTTH activities because hands-on plant and gardening activities can include extensive sensory opportunities. And there are some really great ideas in THAD, and some of them are listed here. Color wheel challenge for distinguishing colors in plants related to visual challenges, or veggie nutrition activity for expanding tactile skills for all populations, and particularly for people with visual impairments, and activities with gustatory and olfactory focus for therapeutic purposes. And then other examples are listed here: eating plant parts, flower vase bouquet using a handheld method. So again, there's quite a range of activities in the database now, and it continues to grow. The HT discipline is expanding its understanding of sensory health, and it's borrowing from other health professions so that it includes the 5 senses we're familiar with, plus proprioception, interoception, and vestibular sense of balance with related therapeutic goals and activities. So take a look at these examples, and they are available in THAD online now, and I think we did include them in the journal article. This broader understanding and inclusion of goals for the 8 senses should include interventions for sensory processing, sensory integration, sensory tolerance, and sensory hand-eye motor skills. And this table focuses, as you can see, on sensory integration. So I think this is an area that maybe many of us are exploring a bit more. THAD activities, again in the sensory health domain, garden style floral arrangement for self-regulation, or bird feeder, developing autonomic and appropriate responses to sensations. And that was written from one of Lee's students, Christina Mortada. Self-selecting sensory breaks while making a walking stick. Thanks, John Murphy from the Carolinas HT Network. And the third one, outdoor obstacle course with therapeutic goals, focusing on regulating sensory responses, written by Greg Stivland, also of the Carolinas Network. Now, this domain is the area being expanded the most, I think, based on research for this database, the journal paper that we did, and the TH activities developed for these sensory challenges. Now, on to the 5th domain and therapeutic goals for the social domain plus THADs. Let's start by saying social functioning encompasses social skills, social behavior, cognition, and communication essential during interpersonal interactions. And then interventions for these challenges or deficits are important throughout the lifespan. So we would be working with populations of all ages. Typical TH goals have included working cooperatively in groups, practicing socially appropriate dress and attitude, particularly in vocational settings, reducing verbal and physical outbursts or threats, maybe practicing nurturing skills for plants and humans, and practice responding appropriately to social cues, all important to horticultural therapy and clients. And here are some THAD examples, and I'll let you peruse them yourself. So let's take a closer look at a THAD with examples from the social domain. Practice pro-social communication behavior aligned with social emotional learning goal. The THAD example is Watering Can Pass Off from Katie Grimes. And this one mentions conscious discipline, which I was not that familiar with until I read Katie's THAD. All of the THADs include the activity description and then therapeutic goals in the 5 domains, the material list, step-by-step instructions, applications for population. Some are written generally and some are for specific populations. And then safety tips, notes, and references. So again, there's quite a bit of information packed in the 2-page format. The Journal of Therapeutic Horticulture paper presents social domain functional areas of, and you see them here, social perception, social interactions, and work interactions. And then 15 subsets, including appropriate communication, engagement, cooperation, pro-social behavior, teamwork and collaboration, and managing expectations. That's one that we don't often talk about in TH. So this is a screenshot from the journal article for social perception and its subsets, plus the THAD examples. And hopefully you're getting the journal so you can refer back to this. So, woo, we've covered 5 health domains with at least 10 therapeutic goals in each, with related TH activities available in THAD. And what we've tried to do is show you the format THAD consistently uses so you can access them easily with content that will inform your practice. Now, there is a lot of information related to the complex area of TH goals, and we certainly can't cover it all in a 1-hour webinar, but hopefully this will whet your appetite and perhaps show you where to go for additional resources. So now that we've covered information on therapeutic goals, let's explore some of the interesting THADs. And we've chosen certain topics for this webinar, our themes, and you see them here: plant task focus, THADs that are population specific, nature THADs, and weird and wonderful THADs. So, wow, we have 200 plus to choose from. Lee, what are our favorites? Okay, I guess I should keep going here. THAD plant task focus. I would say there are at least 40 THADs, and I gathered this number probably 4 months ago, that I would classify as primarily plant task focused. All THADs involve plants, but these are, and you'll see when we go through examples, they are plant task focused. So here are two: geranium propagation. And this THAD lists the supplies, the step-by-step instructions, and then some geranium plant information on ivy, scented, zonal, and regal geraniums. So that's one way you can boost your horticulture knowledge. THADs, as we've been saying, are 2-page activities, so they're nice and concise and easily printed for hard copy. That's typically what I use when I was delivering my programs, hard copy. And then the next plant task focus is hardening off plants. And this THAD shares safety considerations like accessible and safe working areas, need for sun protection, and washing hands after work is completed. So some of these you're going to know intuitively, others may not. And then there are tips for hardening off plants, like reducing water and fertilizer 10 days before transplanting to outdoor beds, or gradual reduction for time outside. A few more examples with the basic plant task theme: harvesting herbs for roots. Why would we do this one? Well, here's why. This can be a physical exercise activity, good for kids and adults. And another reason, few herbs are harvested for roots. So this is an interesting topic that encourages harvesting of garlic, ginger, and/or horseradish. THAD shares nutritional information too, as well as the process of harvesting, which is different for each of these herbs, as is storage once they've been harvested. Next example is forcing paper whites and other bulbs. THAD, and this begins with the dormancy of bulbs, some hort information on unique growth, and inputs for optimal growth. This one can be a great science project or activity with groups that can use bulbs safely. Note, most bulbs have toxicity. We have to be aware of that. And then the next THAD example, planting microgreen seeds. This THAD is written with teachers in mind, is a good introduction to seed planting, which provides quick results, but it also requires plant care. So it's that combination. And the THAD also includes accommodations for participants that can be implemented by volunteers, teachers, or aides. So I hope as we go through these different examples, I'm being effective in sharing kind of the different bits that we're including in the different THADs. So still on the plant task focus, my question: who doesn't like propagating and transplanting? And here are 3 examples. Starting jade plants in soil. Now this one, we use plant metaphors like recovering from surgery, injury, or new beginnings, where jade plants have been used historically for medicinal purposes. And I want to say, steer clear of medical recommendations, but use these as metaphors. And this is a great activity where visual demonstrations for propagating and labeling of new plants shares good horticulture practices, so that might be the focus. The next example, propagation by division. This one is an important horticulture technique that can be recreation and focus, perhaps career exploration, or vocational training. Now, the use of sharp tools may not be appropriate for all groups. It can be sensory stimulating. It can be good for most populations. I would say probably with the exception of ones that shouldn't be using sharp tools, or individuals or populations with sensory intolerance or allergies, where this would really be quite an issue. And then the third example, transplanting herbs to outdoor garden. This is a really good group or individual activity or an intergenerational activity. It encourages cooperation and plant care after planting. So moving on to population-specific THADs. Lee, what populations are you working with at UF Wilmot Gardens, and what TH activities do you find effective? And are these THADs?
So great question. We have this semester, our populations change a little bit every semester, but this semester we are working with University of Florida students who are struggling with stress, anxiety, depression, loneliness. We actually have 5 different groups of that population. We're also working with young adults and adults in addiction recovery, young adults with developmental disabilities. We have what we call our Therapeutic Horticulture alumni group, which is just a mix of people from previous programs. And then we also go out to the psychiatric hospital once a week here in town and take activities out to them. We visit 3 different units while we're out there. So when we can, it's not always possible, but we do try to like to do the same activity with these different groups. And of course, as you can see, just based on all the things that we've talked about, we may emphasize different aspects of that activity, different goals of that activity with each group, depending on their particular needs or the things that we're trying to work on with them. So just using an example of our student group, we do a lot of propagation activities in different forms, really with all of our groups. In our student wellness group, we are intentionally providing wellness strategies, and we're pairing those with horticulture activities. So some of the favorites that we do are kokedama, or Japanese moss balls, and we create macrame hangers that we hang them in. We do nature mandalas, foliage bouquets, tropical terrariums. We do succulent frames, nature journaling, and making teas and things like this. And I think, Lesley, that there's probably a THAD for almost every single one of those. It may not be exactly the way that we use it, but it's even though we've been doing those activities for a long time, we'll go look at that THAD and see, oh, maybe there's an idea in there that we haven't used or that we could incorporate. Maybe there's an idea how we could tweak that activity for a different population. So that's been really helpful. And I think that's so important. And I think we've said that several times during this presentation that, we need to be adapting these particular THADs based on the people that we're working with, our setting, our program goal. In other words, is it education? Is it therapy? Is it recreation? Things like that. So that is really important. Some other examples, and here's a few that you can see that are similar to some of the activities that we do. The kokedama and the herbal tea blending, some things like that. We can have sort of an herbal tea party. Actually, we've decided this semester we're going to combine the nature journaling with the drinking of tea, because one of the things we're trying to do is build community. So what better way to build community than sitting down and drinking tea together that you've made? The Tillandsia terraria you can see here, that's somewhat similar to some of our succulent ones. And the nature mandala activity is fantastic. We just did that a couple of weeks ago. And those are really wonderful. And again, can be adapted. It could be what we do is a sort of an ephemeral or a temporary one where they make it and then we blow it out to the wind. Or it could be one that you actually adhere onto something, some paper. And so all of these activities are going to give you really great ideas for different kinds of applications. Maybe a few more specific THADs for specific populations. Trauma survivors. The one here is expanding sense of safety. So what kinds of activities can we do specifically for trauma survivors? Of course, adaptive gardening, there's all kinds of activities there, whether we're talking about raised beds or we're talking about different kinds of tools or just different types of body positions and motions. So those are also going to be somewhat client dependent, but a very important when we're thinking about therapeutic horticulture. And I think we've got a specific one in there for repetitive motion disorders as well. This bulb lasagna, I think, is such a great one. This is actually geared toward the bereaved population. Commemorative seed packets could be another one that's great. There's a THAD in there that's great for this population as well. We even have some activities for gardening, melatonin, and sleep. So what are some activities that we can do for people with sleep challenges? And how can we bring that discussion of that concept into the particular activity that we're doing? Some other examples. We do have an activity in there that's kind of based on the issues of narcissism. So altruism, narcissism, can we come up with some activities, which these do, that are really focused on selfless acts, sharing materials, giving the things that we're creating to other people. And these THADs are going to have some information on narcissism, different types, on some of the psychological goals that are appropriate. And of course, this is going to be an area that's not going to be appropriate for everybody to do this THAD. But for those that maybe have a clinical diagnosis, other individuals, and that the program leaders actually has some training or expertise in that area, of course, that's important. But that doesn't mean that this particular activity isn't going to be a great activity for you and another population that you might be working with. Leaf print cards, I bet you've all seen something along these lines. Activities can be done and written for accommodations for people with cognitive challenges, whether it's stroke or traumatic brain injury, Huntington's disease. So there's applications for those in there as well. And then this, I think, Lesley, is a newer one, the Georgia red clay soil. This is a child or youth focused THAD. So that's an exciting one. And one of the things I love about these THADs is the pictures. They're just like, it's such a great thing. When you open up that THAD, there's this beautiful picture that immediately gives you an idea of where you might be going with that activity. And that red clay, you can really see that.
Right. Lee, that was written by Sherry Dorn and myself from University of Georgia. She took your HT certificate course.
Yeah, that's great. Yes. And there are some, this is you, I think, right? Did we mention
Yes.
the sense of place one? I think
I think that was the red clay.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yes. So the next area that we wanted to share are nature activities. And I don't know. I mean, we have lots to choose from here, and here are a few. We've tried to share some mentioned in the webinar description, which, oh, I had that brainwave, like making plant photo card game cards, and that's written up as a service project. And then the second example is a game gathering nature's treasures. And the third example is a sensory bin. And you can see on this screen the goals that are identified. And again, this would be one of multiple goals that might be appropriate for your programs or the groups that you're working with. Okay, and now I have to say the first reaction sometimes to THAD nature activities can be like, whoa, I don't think so. These are only activities for kids. But I have to say you are so wrong. I've delivered these across populations, including corrections, seniors, and trauma survivors. And they allow for multiple things, including connection to nature, which we know is so important, a sense of whimsy. Sometimes that's a therapeutic goal, or a return to innocence, and just plain fun. So what we're trying to emphasize, the versatility of THADs and nature connections, and these continue to expand as an important health determinant, and hopefully these will give you some ideas. So the first one is bats, and here's what I'd say. Do you have an active group you're working with that doesn't like to sit still? Well, I had several of these. And making these paper bat puppets, you then get to move around the garden, moving your arms up and down. So this is a great TH activity for youngsters or groups that want to be active. And it's also good for physical rehab. So that might be the population you're working with. And this can increase gross motor skills, moving your arm up and down with a puppet, and vertical arm reach. So perhaps you hadn't really thought of that. Next example is insect hotels, and this can focus on beneficial insects, quite different from the previous activity. This is always a big learning curve, and I'm thinking about my master gardener training when we couldn't believe that there were actually beneficial insects. We now know there are. So this THAD can educate on insects, on environment, on social interactions, on recycling, and it's one that is easily adapted for intellectual abilities of participants. Then the third example here is Eco Seed Orbs, and this one was written by Joanna Brown. And it's a sensory stimulating activity where getting your hands dirty can be a good thing. For those with sensitivities, use non-latex gloves, and that will be listed in the safety portion. And what we do is use air dry clay. The seeds are mixed into it. to be planted in home gardens after the session. So it's a take-home activity. And all I have to say is feel young again, playing in the muck. I myself always wear gloves, however. Okay, so moving on to our last category that we've drawn for this webinar, weird and wonderful THADs. Now, THADs, of course, include plant-focused activities, but TH practice also includes humor, unusual plants, holiday-themed activities, and this is recognizing that different people, populations, and settings may require and respond to a variety of goals and activities. So here are a few that we're referring to as weird and wonderful, starting with a game with that same name. And this is about lesser known plants, and you can see the picture on the screen. Intellectual stimulation and humor, asking participants to give a name to a weird looking plant, or another version sharing plants with animal names. Next example, that's bananas THAD. It starts with sensory stimulation, looking at, smelling, tasting, and more passive horticulture fact sharing. And then this can be followed by more active charades with goals of lengthening attention or practicing being seated before an active interlude. The next example, Xmas ornament, walnut strawberry. And that includes painting, holiday traditions, role reversal through gift giving, along with physical skills like fine motor skills, dexterity. This session can also include themes of transformation, plant metaphors, and disguises for plants and people. That was always a really popular one with my programs. And then the fourth example, conflict resolution sensory pathway. And this was written by Katie Grimes, our co-author. She uses play to practice emotional regulation, relationship building, and how to resolve conflict using a fun visual pathway with figures for young children. It's adaptable for older children or people with developmental delays. And I'm thinking some of us could use this TH session. So one THAD that I've used is photographing nature's micropatterns for wellness groups and workshop attendees. And this one was written by Bree Stark. The activity involves observing, experiencing, and photographing nature elements. And the goals can include experiencing moments of awe, greater recognition of nature experiences for strategies for calming or socializing or sensory interactions, as well as expanding physical skills outdoors, bending, ambulating, or squatting. Middle example is vegetable sailboat idea. This one was from Diane Ralph, and it supports reasoning skills, making the model, as well as spatial awareness and creative expression. Oh, with a chance to eat and talk about healthy vegetables. And then the third example, salty moods and salty plants. This one was recently written and published in THAD, and it is written for mood challenges using an outdoor walk and discussion of salt-tolerant plants and their resiliency to relate plants to human behavior. So you can see that we really try to have a broad interpretation use of plants related to the human health domains. So, summary. Hopefully we're hitting the mark with our time. We would like to thank the 80 contributors to THAD who have written more than 235 therapeutic horticulture activities. The database is a collaborative effort, which gives it diversity and depth and authenticity. And I see some of the contributors in the webinar today. So thanks for sharing your expertise, and we're always looking for more activities. So Lee, I think we've mentioned 75 THADs in 5 health domains with numerous therapeutic goals. So I hope people are interested in THAD, some of the activities, as well as learning some new therapeutic goals for TH. Lee, do you have a few final thoughts to share?
Really, I think that it's important to know that these can really be used as guidelines. We will go in there a lot and just sort of scroll through activities, and something will pop up that looks creative, and we read a little bit more deeply and then think about how we can use that with our group or for our goals. And it's a great way to sort of, trying to think of the right words to use, but to like enlarge that creative cap that you have on. Many of them are things that aren't that unusual, but you might not have thought of using it in that way. So I really highly recommend, whether you're looking for a specific activity or not, just scroll through and see there's just an unbelievable amount of creativity in there. And it really helps then expand your own creativity.
Wonderful. That's great. So here's our contact information. And Sarah, I guess you'll tell us if we have time for Q&A.
Yeah, we have about 5 minutes. If anyone wants to post a message, I had just posted something in the chat that you can put your questions in there. And also Jessica Sullivan has done a great job of putting a link directly to the THAD in the chat for everyone several times as people kind of entered. So make sure that if you have any trouble finding that that link, that you just jump into your chat. So I am happy to take questions, give them to our presenters. And Lesley and Lee, sometimes the questions just go directly to you. If you don't mind just popping into your chats to see if you have any questions in there.
Okay.
Leah and Lesley, can you give any details on if someone wants to contribute an activity to the database?
Sure. I would say, take a look at the database to see if there's something similar. That said, we are making the database more robust. So even if you want to do an activity on tea blending, you might write it for a specific population different than the current THAD. I think the easiest way is either to contact Lee or myself, or there's a contact box on the website that gets through to us. And, when I write articles, I usually explore the idea before I go to all the work of writing it. So that's probably one suggestion. But, there's infinite number of activities, infinite number of populations. So yes, please, we want to continue to build this database.
And I would also just add that before you write something up, make sure you do the activity. I think those of us that run these activities know that we might think, oh, I know how to do that. That's no problem at all. And then you do it with a particular group in mind, and there's all sorts of challenges that you weren't expecting. So those challenges are great though, because then it helps you recognize the different applications. So definitely do the activity or watch somebody else do it as you give some instruction, and then just note down all the things that were going to be helpful in making this a more robust activity as you write it up.
Yeah, super. Now I see one comment from Pam Chance, and I think maybe it was just sent to me. Please consider including expectant and new parents and those of children with special needs. Okay, well, I don't have experience with that population. So Pam, if you do, let's work on it. I'm happy to help. And that's a very interesting population. Special needs, we do have some that talk about special needs, but again, that's an area that we can build. There are some areas within THAD where we don't have as many. I've just written one on active military, and that's a population that we don't have as many THADs for. Same with rehabilitation. So calling all practitioners who want to co-work on any of these activities, we're happy to do that.
And that's a really interesting idea too, is that we don't have that many THADs that are specifically focused on the caregiver. They tend to be focused more on the person with the primary disability or diagnosis. And so if you're interested in the caregiver perspective, which is a really, really important one, we've done some programs here specifically for caregivers, or care partners is what we like to call them. Think about looking at some of these existing ones that you think might be good, and then adapting them specifically for the care partner of that particular group. That could be a whole other category, which would really be fantastic.
Right. I got a direct message from CL Tarantola. Thank you so much for sharing the resources. And she says IEPs and students. She would like to see some with THADs for students with severe and profound disabilities. Again, that's an area that we would love to build. Hopefully she'll get this message back, or I don't know, the tech ladies, can you maybe I guess I can get her email after and follow up with her. Thank you.
Leah, do you have any questions there? We have about time for about one more, or Jessica.
I'm not seeing any on my specific chat.
Okay, great. This was immensely helpful. I always love kind of getting this view of the THAD database. It is a wonderful resource. And again, it has all those wonderful goals. It has the great organization. So you know if you're going in for a specific population or a specific plant that you can kind of search in that way. But as Lesley had just mentioned too, and Lee, make sure that you are also using your own creativity, right? If you have a specific population that you think a certain activity would work for, by all means try it, because these are ones that have been shown time and again to be effective and to meet those goals. So, and then share that feedback with us. That's part of why we run these webinars. And we're so happy to have everyone join us today for this webinar to get some of your feedback and questions as well. As a reminder, if you're not already a subscriber, you can subscribe to the Florida Horticulture for Health Network. Our next webinar will be Wednesday, March 26th at noon Eastern Standard Time, and that is Seed Your Future. It's presented by Jasmine Albaran, and a brief description for you before you leave. So Seed Your Future was created to address the labor shortage in the horticulture industry and the associated supply chains. A strong future for our industry, which will be increasingly called upon to help solve complex environmental and mental health challenges, requires a strong plan for developing future talent. Seed Your Future's approach to cultivating and diversifying the labor pipeline for horticulturalists will be presented, and how individuals and groups can play a role in seeding the future for our industry. A very different webinar than today's webinar, but equally as fascinating. So I hope you'll join us. That's being co-hosted by the Florida Horticulture for Health Network and the Mid-Atlantic Horticultural Therapy Network. And we thank everyone for attending. Looking forward to seeing you all soon. Take care.